ramble is all about the cool spaces that you get into when you start to ramble. So I'm here for it.
Okay.
But super excited to have you on. We're talking to Chris Handberg, Executive Director at Indy Pride. I was really excited we got connected. I think we actually got connected through Tiffany, which we had on the show earlier, but it could have been through somebody else. But I think even way back in like December, we had your name on a whiteboard on a list of just people that we wanted to talk to. And maybe that was actually, we had your name on a whiteboard, a list of people that we wanted to talk to in 2020. And this was obviously before coronavirus, all this craziness happened. And we've had to shift some stuff, but you've been on our radar. Just a story that we wanted to tell that I think our listeners are going to be super excited to hear about. So if you can, just give us a brief overview of who you are, what you do here in the city, and then we'll kind of work our way backwards from there.
Well, I'd say I do remember that because a lot of people tagged me and I'm thinking, this is amazing. Like, I think Larry Bird was on the list and Michelle Obama and all these other people. And I'm just like, I grew up in a really small country town with, one stoplight and tractors going to the high school. So for me, it was just kind of really nice to be on a whiteboard with so many famous people. But my name's Chris Handberg. I am the executive director of Indy Pride. I started back in 2017 in June. The organization had never had a paid employee before me, and they just realized they have gotten to the point of needing to have someone that's a full-time staff member to engage with the community, engage with other organizations, advocate for LGBTQ issues, but also be that solid point of contact for sponsors and vendors and the community for the Pride Festival and Parade.
And what was your involvement kind of before that? Were you working as a volunteer before you were a paid employee? Were you at a completely different organization? Was your background in nonprofits?
Oh, sure. So ironically, no, I had never I'd been to Pride like twice and had really no involvement in the community itself. Because I was just sort of like, I'm a natural introvert. I like to play video games and just keep to myself. So, going out is not like top priority, which most people would think I would be loving the COVID situation, but I'm trapped inside with my husband and 3 kids under 5 years old. So the noise never really stops. But I actually started my career as a youth minister in the Church of the Brethren. And I came out while I was a youth pastor. And then I started a job down at the Julian Center where I was an outreach advocate with IMPD. And so whenever someone experienced domestic violence or sexual assault, I got a page to go to the scene and do crisis intervention with those who'd experienced domestic violence and sexual assault. And then I took a job at Carmel High School, and I did that full time, and I taught English and biblical literature, but I also kept this part-time job with the Julian Center, which gave me some nonprofit experience, and then took a job at the Domestic Violence Network as a program director. And I started working with Indy Pride Board because we were developing like trainings and modules to increase accessibility and equality for LGBTQ folks. And I got to know the board president really well, and they kept saying, hey, we're doing this job, you should apply for it. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at. And then the more that I thought about it and the more that I had conversations, the more it became something I really wanted to do. So I've been there for 3 years now.
Wow. And so one of the things that you just kind of mentioned, and I don't know how comfortable you are talking about it, but you mentioned coming out when you said you were a minister.
Oh, yeah. So I came out when I was a youth pastor. I went, there was definitely a span of time when I would sneak down to Indy from Anderson to go to gay bars on Saturday night and then come to church still a little drunk and, having been with the gay boys all night. So it was definitely a lot of conflict in my life where there's this part of me that is what I've been told is morally wrong and I should not accept. And then the other part of me is this person of faith that's leading these youth in this congregation. And so it took about 1.5 years of me slowly telling people and processing it to come out. So, yeah, but I was like super conservative and loved it. So.
Yeah. And I mean, And I'm not meaning to laugh at it by
Oh,
any.
laugh. It's hilarious. It
Uh,
is hilarious.
I mean,
So,
who was the first person you told?
the first person that I told outside of like bar acquaintances was my best friend, or one of my best friends that lived in London. And so he was a foreign exchange student when I was in high school, and I would go to Sweden to see him, and he lived in London. So I went to London and just said, "So I've discovered this new thing about myself. I hope you don't mind, because I'm spending the next 2 weeks with you." And literally told him the first night. And being the European liberal socialist he was didn't phase him at all. And then just kind of slowly started coming out to my roommates, because we lived in a lake house and we were in a Christian rock band together. So that was fun. And told the people I lived with, and told my mother on Mother's Day. She laughed and thought it was hilarious. And, it was very accepting. Like she had an inappropriate sense of humor. So it was totally cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like a very difficult circumstance, at least from the outside, to be in, to just kind of start telling people, right? When you just think about, the community of faith and kind of how opposed the I don't know, the perception of that all is. It just seems like an extremely difficult decision to make.
Well, coming out in general just kind of sucks, because you're exposing this very vulnerable part of yourself. You're not sure of how they're going to react. And most of the time, people react in really crappy ways. They're either like really excited and they want to go to gay bars and drag shows with you, which isn't necessarily what you want.
Right.
They love to say, "Oh, I've always known, I've known your whole life," which is totally deflating, because I'm sharing this very personal part of myself. Or they're just dicks about it. Like they're just I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to swear. So,
Oh, yeah, it's very encouraged.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, like some people are just, dicks. And I lost lots of friends from the church, and like my college core group of friends all were pissed. And I haven't talked to them since then. It's been a couple of years. Um, the best way to like react is just casual indifference and support of, this is who you are. We love you. We support you. And I experienced quite a bit of that, but also it's just so emotionally exhausting to just have to lead up to it and
Mhm.
explain it and answer questions. So, most of the time it's people just want you to know for whatever reason.
Was there like any empowerment in kind of coming out for yourself?
Oh,
Like,
oh yeah. Like every time I told someone and they reacted positively, I just wanted to like tell more people, because I felt so much better about myself. Um, and then ultimately, like, I just didn't care. I was like walking this tightrope on the church of, well, some of the cool people know, and some of the uncool people don't know. And I just got to a point where I didn't care. And
right.
then, people found out and had meetings about my sexuality and fitness to be a youth pastor. And some people wanted me to stay and some people wanted me to go. And I'm like, I'm out. I'm
Yeah.
done.
So
So,
you chose to resign from.
yeah, but in the church, you have to. In this church, they had a 3 month like resignation. It's not give your 2 weeks; it's give your 3 months.
Wow.
So literally, every single Sunday, somebody else found out, somebody else knew, and wanted to gossip and talk, and so that was interesting. And like, there was a lot of Karens in the congregation. Of like one mom called me. She's like, "I just feel so betrayed," and I'm like, "What's been done to you?" Like,
Right.
I'm sorry, you know. So anyway, uh, it was looking back, like it was definitely like a hard thing that I was very dramatic about, and woe was me. And now I'm like, God, I wish I could go back to that, where the hardest thing in my life was coming out. We didn't have to deal with a pandemic and all that other stuff. So
Right. But I love that you can kind of joke about it now, but I can assume that up to that point, how old were you?
I was 23 when I left the church. No, I was 25 when I left the church. I was
25.
23 when I started coming out to people.
I can imagine
and
that
I'm
that's
40 now.
probably the hardest thing that you had done up until that point is kind of having to do that.
Sure. It definitely like built up that tolerance to deal with other things in life. So, and I
And
know that,
go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, you go ahead. I was just going to ramble some more. Like, it's just
No.
not that easy for some people to come out. Like, I was very, very fortunate. I was not sure how my parents would react. But I was also like on my own. I didn't need their financial support.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of folks, especially now, that do rely on that. And I have close friends still that their families are just pricks and won't talk to them and won't acknowledge that part of their lives. And they have to go to holiday dinners without their partners, without their fiancés, and just sucks for them. So,
And before we kind of move on with your story and kind of get to the next section here, I want to have an opportunity here. You mentioned that people were just dicks, right? Like, if you could give advice to people that do have a friend or a family member or a loved one that chooses to come out to them and kind of share that part of their life with them, like what is a good way to react? You know, how do you wish people would have responded to to you telling them that?
mhm. I mean, I think love, I support you, not referring to it as a choice or a preference, just saying like, this is just another part of you and thank you for sharing that with me. And not trying to one up them. Like, there are some people that um, have stereotypical gay qualities. Um, and people love to say, well, we always knew you were gay. Like, just say, I love you. And I'm happy to walk through this journey with you. Um, and then on the opposite end, if you are someone who's, struggling to come out or you've had some real bad experiences, it is 100% okay to cut out toxic people, including family members from your life. Like, you don't need to be around them if you can get on by your own. So, yeah.
Love it. I love it. So you made your way kind of through those transitions in your career. You ended up at Indy Pride. You said 2017.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit, if you can, dive into what the mission of the organization.
So the mission of Indy Pride is really to serve as this, hub where people can access resources, access information. We do educational events. We do advocacy for LGBTQ issues, and really try to serve as leaders in the community when it comes to just issues that impact LGBTQ folks. And so, one thing that we started doing was pulling together um, representatives from a lot of the major companies in Indiana and Indianapolis that have employee resource groups that focus on LGBTQ issues. And so in Salesforce and Eli Lilly and Roche and all of those big companies, they have employee resource groups specific to our community. So on a quarterly basis, we pull them together and have conversations about what's working in your company, how do you increase visibility and diversity, how do you support LGBTQ folks, what are some, and just have a networking brainstorming session. And that's just been a really, really fun project to be part of. We also do a lot of events that are meant to build our community socially. It is very rare for you to be around people that are like you if you're part of the LGBTQ community and you're having to navigate through a cisgender heteronormative world. So, like, first time I went to a gay bar, I had never been around gay people before in such large numbers. And I went to Greg's and I walked in as a youth pastor and said, this is how people must feel when they go to church. Because I'd never been around people that were like me and I could just let my guard down. And I didn't have to code switch and I didn't have to watch all of my words and pronouns and just be myself. And so for that piece, it looks like we're just having a big party, but really we're building significant relationships for people in the community that can be life-saving. A lot of research shows that those social connections prevent, substance abuse and can really help with people's mental health, and a whole host of protective factors are increased when they have meaningful social connections.
So yeah, and I can imagine that having those events is a huge part of kind of building that community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you, what's been the increase in involvement and engagement here in Indianapolis from kind of when you started?
I have definitely seen a larger, like all of our numbers consistently go up. And so, most of our events that we would have in May and June have anywhere from 2 to 500 people show up. And that's just the one-off events like Pet Pride or Community Picnic. But then the parade and the festival, last year we had over 55,000 people ticketed and at the festival, which is the first time we've had like real data about who comes to our festival and how many people show up. Before it was just guesstimates where the city of Indianapolis would say, well, it kind of looked like you had this amount of people. And then different folks would do things with those numbers. I'm not sure how accurate some of those early numbers are from like, the late 2000s into the 2010s, but we definitely had a huge crowd. And the majority of people were from our community, but also a lot of allies supporting, which becomes an internal struggle of, are we putting on a big celebration for people that support us, or are we putting on something that reflects our community? So, and always trying to be true to
Explain that difference. I think it can be easily kind of looked over, right, in terms of like what that actually means.
So our community, the LGBTQ plus community, is a large umbrella of different types of folks from racial and ethnic, backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, life experience. Like we just cross the spectrum. And a lot of times now that we have this, acceptance, as it were, where, and really what it is like now liberals are okay saying that they're okay with us. I mean, for years and years and years, it was Republicans hate us and Democrats, well, we might get there. And it really, like even Obama in 2008 wasn't for gay marriage. And it wasn't until Joe Biden, went on Meet the Press or Good Morning America and said, oh yeah, we're totally cool with it. And then Obama had to say, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, yeah, we're cool. And I love Obama. I used to have his picture up in my house, like, but it was the Republican that hates you to your face or the Democrat that hates you behind your back. That's been the history until the last 5-7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So now liberals are like, oh, it's okay to like you and it's okay to love you and it's okay to celebrate. So then they come in and they want, especially like the straight heterosexual allies, want the event to be catered to them. And so like I've gotten emails for the past 2 years after the Pride Festival about how inappropriate it is that men are walking around in assless chaps and women are showing their breasts at a Pride Festival when I'm bringing my kids here. And I'm thinking, it's a Pride Festival. What did you expect? Like, this is the time when we get to be ourselves. And it's a lot of our community is based on sexuality and gender.
Right.
And bending the gender norm and expressing your sexuality freely, especially in the early days of the movement, like the 70s and 80s, when we were being so hammered by the religious right for being immoral, our community took it up and said, you know what, I'm going to be immoral and I'm going to have sex with lots and lots of people because it's a middle finger to you. And we have to acknowledge that part of our history and celebrate those that still express who they are that way and not sanitize it just because straight cisgender people want to be part of the festival.
Right. And have you found with more with bigger organizations involved? I know that Salesforce is a huge sponsor of some of the events. Have they put any, like, not that they've put restrictions, but have you felt any of that of having to kind of bend to any of those types of things?
Absolutely not. No. I have individual conversations with any company or entity that wants to give us money. And so I always go through like, here's what you're getting into. And then I look at what are your practices for LGBTQ people in your company. And if they don't have an equal protection for trans and LGBTQ folks in their mission statement, or not their mission statement, in their policies and procedures, then I say, you're not ready to sponsor us.
Right.
I had last year, I turned down 6 sponsorships because they weren't ready. And one company, and I always say, but we can get you there, and I'll work with you to develop those policies and procedures, and training and anything else that you need. And one company took us up on it and really excelled at LGBTQ inclusiveness. And so they're certainly a strong sponsor now.
Right. And you can kind of see the difference there, just even hearing you talk about it, between somebody who's like trying to buy their way into looking good versus someone who actually wants to be a supporter of that community.
I'm not going to say the name of the broadcasting entity in town that has really conservative radio hosts, really conservative. Like, they have called me out by name for being like a horrible, leftist or whatever they say. And they wanted to sponsor us and give us money and change their image. And I'm like, well, let's change your content before we talk about your image. If you can't get this person and this person and this person to rein in their homophobia and transphobia, I can't take your money. As much as I need the money or want the money, I'm not taking money from you. So that was the end of that conversation.
As it should have been. So, I mean, talk a little bit, maybe your own personal history, but the history of Pride. Like, when did these festivals start to pop up and kind of become a thing? And what was your first experience going to a Pride festival? Where was it at?
Yeah, well, it's very timely that we talk about Pride, because Pride started as a protest against police brutality.
Wow.
And especially in the last month or a couple of months in Indianapolis and throughout the country, we have just seen very visible, very horrific images and experiences of people of color where they're being brutalized by the police. In town, we had, Sean Reed was killed by the police. And then protesters were doing a peaceful protest. And I had several friends there sending me video and trying to, and asking me to call the media, because obviously I have some media contacts with my position, to get them there, where these people were just, rubber bullets and pepper spray, and people were bleeding, and I saw the videos of it. And then the police department says, well, there was an altercation, but nobody was hurt. And I'm watching this video of people being hurt and the media just parroting what the police are telling them. And it was just outrageous. And for the Black Lives Matter protesters and the queer protesters that were out there, like, we stand with you, because our movement started as a protest. And what happened was, they would raid gay bars or locations that were known to have gay people and trans people and arrest them. And they did it at the Stonewall Inn, and people got fed up and they started throwing bricks at the police, and it was riots and standoffs for days and days and days. Some of our greatest, community leaders were born out of that: Marsha Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, and it sort of springboarded. Like, that was the most visible sign of protest for LGBTQ folks back in 1969. But other movements were also popping up around the country, especially San Francisco. And interesting fact, the reason New York and San Francisco are hot spots for gay folks is that when someone was in the army and at war, World War II, they would or Vietnam, they would just pull them up in a boat to dishonorably discharge them and leave them there. They couldn't go home to their families. They couldn't do anything. So they would just end up in those cities. And that's why we have so we owe the U.S. Army for creating the gay rights movement, in a sense. So Indy itself didn't really catch on during that growing movement time until 1982. And there was a dinner for gay folks. And it was really gay male centric at the Essex Hotel that's been closed down. It used to be on the Circle. And some people that attended wore masks to go in because they were afraid of being seen. And then the next year they did a picnic. And then Indy itself has had an LGBTQ picnic every year since 1983, with the exception of this year. And so, I mean, we can't do it because of COVID. But last year we had about 1,500 people show up to it. And so that to me is like my personal favorite event because it has such a rich history of just people gathering in the park. We grill out burgers, hot dogs, and then we have a drag softball game to raise money for the local HIV/AIDS fund. So
Wow. I mean, that's crazy. I had no idea that this started out of kind of like that movement started out of protest. Um, you learn
I
something.
mean, it's so interesting that, the short history, gay marriage is 5 years old. And the only reason I know that is because my 5-year wedding anniversary is coming up, and my husband and I got married that same summer. But going to Target and seeing the Pride collection, that's about 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, especially in the 90s, when all of these LGBTQ organizations and nonprofits are starting up and they're trying to serve the community, whether it's for HIV services or just housing, employment, what have you, to do festivals. Nobody corporate-wise would give us any money except for alcohol and tobacco. And they were just, targeting our community, especially the tobacco folks, really marketed to target our vulnerable population to get us hooked on their product. And it worked. It worked. They have the smoking rates among LGBTQ people are exceptionally higher than non-LGBTQ folks.
And is that an issue that gets talked about, like that gets addressed, or you guys try to do something about that, or no?
Yeah, so we have a partnership with the Tobacco Prevention and Cessation Commission here in Indianapolis, or here in Indiana. It's part of the State Department of Health. And the main stage banners along the festival site have the quit line, and then we give them several booths to strategically place. 3 years ago, we became one of only 3, Pride festivals in the country to choose to go tobacco free. And so we have designated smoking areas in the festival grounds, but you can't just walk around smoking and vaping. And the real reason is that the majority of people want to breathe clean air, and we want to promote healthy lifestyles. We love people in our community. We love people who smoke and who use tobacco. We don't look down on them, but we also just want them to be considerate of other people. And so we've had a really good partnership. We share a lot on social media and trying to flatten that curve.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's an important one. And I think as we continue to get the data behind COVID, I think it also brings to light a lot of these other issues that can also be seen as pandemics, right? That really aren't being talked about, especially when people, and there really is no comparison. I don't think when you're trying to say, okay, hey, people that are dying from COVID, people that are dying from lung disease as a result of smoking cigarettes, but the rates are alarming, right? And it's not talk about because there's lobbyists out there that are really promoting these products. But it's definitely something that, I think once we get out of some of this stuff, I'm hoping that some of that shifts and people do start talking about, especially with the underlying issues that kind of accelerate some of the issues with what's going on now.
Yeah. What is when we're done with this look like? Is it when we have a vaccine? I mean, it's very interesting the past couple of weeks, the way that people have reacted. And it's this political thing now of if you're wearing the mask, then you're a liberal. If you're not wearing a mask, you're a conservative. And some people are just like, I need a break from it, so I'm just going to pretend we're done. So it's just so interesting. But my first Pride, I remember specifically, I had just quit the church. And what was funny is that some people in the church knew that I was gay. And there was this really creepy guy that kept following me around all the time in church because he was gay and just really obnoxious. And he would say, do you want to hang out on Friday night? And I'd say, no, I don't really want to. I got something else going on. And then he'd tell people that I ditched him. And I'm like, I didn't ditch you. I said no. So I stepped into Pride for the first time, really excited to see all the rainbows. It's on the big plaza by the War Memorial. And the step on the sidewalk, and the first thing I hear is, "Hey, Chris," and it's this guy, and I'm just like, yeah. I remember going to Pride then, and then I went a couple of other times when I was working the domestic violence stuff to work some booths, and I always liked it, but I was always really intimidated to fully let myself embrace it, just insecurities and not really sure where I fit in, and and now I don't care. Love me or hate me.
Executive director, you probably.
Right. But yeah, it's super fun.
Uh, and you mentioned something about drag, and there are a ton of drag events that happen here in Indianapolis. I think when we spoke to the folks over at Indiana Humanities, they mentioned they were doing some sort of a drag bar crawl, but there was some history that I don't really remember associated with it. Maybe there was like a doctor or nurse, like some famous drag nurse here in Indianapolis. Does any of that kind of ring a bell?
Not the specific person, but the the Indy Bag Ladies are a group of drag queens of people like me, where we're not drag queens, but once a year we'll dress up in drag, we'll load up on a charter bus, and we'll drive to a whole bunch of different restaurants and then just harass customers for donations. And so literally it's me, not the most attractive guy and really not the most attractive woman, going in bad makeup, bad dress, bad wig, going up and just talking like this and saying, hey, why don't you give me $20 for charity? And it is hilarious and such a great time. And they've been doing that for 40 years this year.
Wow.
And they're one of the oldest LGBTQ HIV fundraising groups in the country. And so the Indie Bag Ladies, we've got great people like Latrina Bidet and Blossom Summer and or Autumn Blossom Summer. Yeah, Summer Blossom. I can't. Anyway, Kobe Palmer, fantastic. Gary Brackett, fantastic people that started this movement, and it continues today. So.
Okay, sorry. I was trying to look for this thing because now I feel like I brought something up that I just don't have the details to support, and now a nurse safe sex, maybe. Okay.
Nurse safe sex.
Yes, maybe.
I'm familiar with that one.
So it mentions okay. Okay, so it says that the Indianapolis Bag Ladies here. I'm going to share my screen real quick for anybody that's
sure.
Going to follow along on video. So see if you can see here. Can you see this screen?
Yeah, that's the bus tour right there.
So it says the mission. Okay, character called Nurse Safe Sex in 1985. Okay.
I actually have some posters in my office of this person right here. We just got a whole bunch of just vintage posters from the 80s and 90s, and isn't it hilarious to like refer to the 90s as vintage? But I know, like I feel like I was just listening to Smashing Pumpkins and Richie's band, at 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to get home before my parents noticed. So anyway, yeah, that's it. We have a lot of partnership with them. Great people. They will always donate their time, their resources to help us out and to help out the community. So I can't say enough good things about them.
Well, and I love that there is this kind of like rich history that people can look back on. We joke about the 90s kind of being vintage, but you got to think that was 30 years ago, right? So there's a lot of time between now and then, and generations of new people that are coming out, or generations of new people that are allies that want to learn about some of this stuff in terms of like where it all started and some of the cool things that happened in their own city, right? To be prideful of, no pun intended, but to have a little bit of pride about like, okay, hey, we were supporters back in 1985 and we were doing things that were nationally recognized.
Yeah. And I tell you, I came out when I was, 23, 25, and I really miss like the heyday of gay bars in Indianapolis. I mean, people just don't go out the way they used to. And we had Talbot Street, which was this great dance club, and you could go there and just spend all night. I mean, you watch movies about like what club life was like, and we had one of those here in Indianapolis. And you had these other great gay bars that were thriving and packed wall to wall with folks that were part of your community. And then slowly, as acceptance came, especially with Talbot Street, because they had a really great drag show and 2 showings a night, it got killed by bachelorette parties, because all of the bachelorette white girls in their mid-20s wanted to go see a drag show. Let's go see a drag show. Oh my God, it'd be so fun. And they come in with the sashes, and then they start, looking at us like we're animals and say, touch my boobs, it's okay, you're gay. And it's like, Yeah, that's the last thing I want to do, lady, is touch your boobs. So um, I mean, that's not the only reason Talbot Street went down, but I remember specifically being like, God, this kind of sucks in here now,
Yeah.
because it's just all of these like straight white cisgender women. So anyway,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like listening to an underground band that suddenly becomes
right.
and everybody is coming out of the woodwork, just like, I love this band forever. And just like, no, what?
Right. Yeah, like being gay is the ultimate underground band.
I actually had an experience going to Talbot Street when I was at Purdue. There was a band, I'm sorry, not a band, a DJ. Uh,
Mhm.
Gosh, and I'm trying to remember who it was. Maybe it was like Above and Beyond. But I was really into like house, electronic, like EDM music in
Yeah.
college. And I had a friend who was a DJ who would come DJ here in Indy. And I remember the big thing was like, hey, we're going to Talbot Street. That's a gay bar. I'm like,
Yeah, right. Like, oh my
cool, but
gosh.
I'm there for the music.
Well, and here's something else to consider. I think it was in at least the last 3 to 5 years that the gay bars put windows in. The Metro, Greg's, English Ivy, none of them had windows that you could see into the establishment until the last 3 to 5 years. And I remember really appreciating that when I was, closeted and coming down to the bars. I would park 5 blocks away, sneak and dive through bushes and trash cans and sneak my way to the bar, try to get in as quick as possible and hope that I didn't run into anybody I know and have to explain why I was there. And so that also is part of our history. And even people that come out, they may not be out at work. And then they run into a coworker or they run into somebody's sister or whatever. And you got to explain why you're there. And it was rough, in that sense.
Well, and I don't think that that's not a thing. We talked about just these murders that were going on by police officers, and it's just one of those things that you just don't have to think about, right? Like,
Mhm.
as a brown person, it's I've been fortunate enough to kind of assimilate into this country enough to where I really haven't had weird looks or have to have second thoughts about what I do when I do it. But same thing goes for what you're saying. It's just like it's not something that normal white male female needs to think about when they go out to just a bar, right? Like no one's going to judge you for being you
Right.
at the place that you're being, right?
Well, and it's very interesting too that for years, LGBTQ culture, gay culture, was dominated by, and still is to a certain extent, by cisgender gay white men. They're the ones that kind of organized and used the privilege that they had to navigate and push all of the movement forward, especially through the HIV/AIDS movement and in that experience. But then to organize and use those skills that they get because of their privilege. And now we're at a place where we're finally ceding some of that power and leadership to communities that have been marginalized, whether that's communities of color or trans folks or gender diverse folks, to let them lead. And it is we're very, very fortunate that those folks still want to engage with us, even as cautiously as they may sometimes, because especially for trans communities and communities of color, when we're all celebrating gay marriage as a huge victory, they're just trying to live and they're trying to stay alive. Where trans women of color are like every year there's at least 20 to 30 to hundreds of people that are killed that nobody remembers, nobody talks about, nobody knows about. But then I remember when Matthew Shepard was killed because he was gay in 1995, 1997, and it made national news. And we still know who we're talking about when we say Matthew Shepard. And there are hundreds of Matthew Shepards that happen every year to the trans community and especially the trans women of color, that nobody hears about, nobody knows about. And that really is the part of activists and pride organizations to say those names and to lift up those voices.
Yeah, and it's a hugely important thing to do, right? It's
Yeah.
just having, making that knowledge accessible to people so that they understand, what's really going on. So obviously things have been different here these last 90 or so days.
Right.
When we first talked about having you on, we were super excited because it was going to be leading into Pride Month,
Right.
to the festival. Now things have had to be postponed, or canceled. So how are you guys navigating that for people that still want to participate and take part, in Pride Month? What are some of the events that you guys have shifted, and how have you adapted to the situation right now?
Well, I think at first, like in that March, we all just kind of were in a holding pattern, waiting to see what was going to happen. Like it was a shock to everybody that this can't last until June. This can't last until August. This can't last until this time. And so we were just kind of waiting. And we have some good partners at the Department of Health um, that was giving us guidance on, here's where you really should be. And so we set like an alternate date for August. Okay, so maybe June's too soon, but by August we'll be able to have it. And the more that the situation developed, the more obvious it was that no, we can't do that in August. So we had paused everything, and now it's like, okay, well, let's shift to virtual. Well, why are we going to wait until August if we're just doing it virtually? So we've been scrambling for the past, 4 weeks to put together an online content that people are going to want to watch and want to participate in. And so we started DJs and Drinks, where we go to different gay bars and hear the history of the gay bar, how the bartenders make us a special cocktail, listen to a DJ play. And we've had some pretty good engagement. We've had about 2,500 to 3,000 people at each one of those, which is good for us, right? And then we're planning a couple more of those, and then some really great events to try to pack it in the way we normally would in June. We're going to have virtual Pride on June 20th, which is going to be programming from 2 to 11. We're going to have everything from drag queens impersonating celebrities playing the match game, to a cooking demonstration, to a trivia game that I'm going to host where you can play for your favorite LGBTQ charity, and they'll get a donation. And also entertainment, music acts, a lot of local artists that normally wouldn't get a spotlight are going to be able to perform. And we're selling yard signs on our website. And I really want to see the community just have these yard signs. They say, stay healthy, stay proud. And we just launched it a couple of days ago, and folks should start getting them once they order them next week.
And so what is the price on one of those? I'm on the website now.
I think with shipping, it's $21. Maybe it's 18 with shipping. I know shipping's $3. And it's indypride.org. You can go there, and that's the banner that's going to show up is Shop with Pride. And I really hope that people show their pride in that way. I literally dropped off our Pole Street banners to the Department of Public Works this morning, so that you'll see those along the circle. Last year was the first time that we put up those banners because it cost about $3,000 to $5,000 to do that. And we're a nonprofit, so spending that kind of money on a banner that's just going to be in the street didn't seem very practical. But we were fortunate to have some deals and some sponsors help support us. And I was so shocked and amazed how that visibility, how much that meant to people. And so people would take selfies and put them on Facebook and tag us on Facebook. And lots of people sent me very emotional messages of, I never thought I'd see the day when we are so visible all month long. And it really is something special for folks to have the banners up. So we wanted to do that this year, since even though we're not doing any public events outside.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, hell, if we're gonna paint the town with checkered for a
Right.
one-day race, this is like the least that the city could embrace.
Right. And I'm really hoping that we'll get some good light shows going to the Circle. A good friend of mine that actually we grew up in the same small town, and she's she does a lot of stuff with Downtown Indy. She works at Downtown Indy. I'm not sure her title. I'd love to say she runs it, but I don't think she does. But anyway, her name's Courtney, and so she helps me out a lot with some of the city stuff and and getting people on board. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. So I think last year you guys had Lizzo as like a headliner at the festival. I want to hear about that experience. The funny thing is just like my own personal experience with her music. Like at the time, I remember my social media was blowing up with everybody who was there talking about Lizzo. And I was like, who the hell is Lizzo? Who is this person?
Right.
Why does it matter? And then like 3 months later, I heard Truth Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, holy cow, she's awesome. How did I miss? Like, I hate missing out on shows that are in my backyard. Like, and I
A
had
$5 show. I mean, it was $5 to get into the. I mean, the festival. We are committed to making the entry fee $5, and if you can't afford the $5, then you can just come in for free. We have lots of solidarity tickets because we don't want it to be cost prohibitive, but to put on the festival itself costs about $750,000. And so, right. So we've got to come up with almost $750,000 every year to put on a festival. And so we have ticketing fees, and then we had the VIP, which I deemed the VIP section as the juice box last year, because Lizzo, her song was Juice, or her album was Juice. I thought it was brilliant.
awesome.
And even that was $60 to get a VIP ticket to the Lizzo concert. And then she came to play Bankers Life and Life Fieldhouse. I think it was like $100 a ticket. I'm like, sound was better at our show. So the story is, I'm not an entertainment like agent. Like I don't know who to contact and how to wheel and deal. So we built a partnership with Radio Now and said, all right, you get us an artist and we'll pay for it, or at least part of it. And we can have a partnership that way. You can be the official Pride station. And so they came back with like 3 artists, and they're like, well, this person, and Lizzo. So I listened to all 3, and I'm like, nobody cares what my taste in music is, but I like Lizzo, and I think other people might like Lizzo. So in December, we booked her for a very, very modest fee. I can't tell you the exact number, but wow. Yeah. It was less than a year's tuition at a state school. So, which is unheard of because most acts that of any caliber, you have to pay $50,000 to $100,000 for.
Right.
So as she started to blow up, so we booked her in December. Then January, she did some talk shows. I'm like, okay, she's on Fallon, cool, notoriety. And then she kept snowballing and getting bigger and bigger. And I was nervous as hell that she was going to cancel because she didn't need the money anymore, and she could break the contract. And we had already announced, and everyone was freaking out. So when she got there, I got the chance to spend a few minutes with her, and I said, look, I know you didn't need to do this, but I really, really appreciate you keeping your commitment. And it means so much to all of these people. This is the biggest crowd we've ever had, and it's because of you, and because of Pride, but also because of you.
Yeah.
And she was so, just like, she's so cool in person. Like, she was just nice. I'm like, can I have your phone number, and can we text every 5 minutes and be best friends? I texted. I don't think she gave me the right number.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So
So
were you in the juice box for that performance?
most of the day, like we had planned for about 35,000 people, and 55,000 showed up, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I think for about 6 hours, I was just running from crisis to crisis, putting out fires, and I didn't even get to see the performance. I got to jump in to a quick photo with her and some other Pride volunteers, and then I think I was, we had forgotten to take down the fence. That's what it was. So Lizzo's performing. It's a sea of people, 30,000 people there just for that performance. And we had forgotten to open up the exits at the, by the side of the park. So we're all there with little wrenches, unscrewing the fence and just throwing the fence off to the side, because we know as soon as that last song is hit, everyone's storming this way. And if they got to funnel through like 2 doors, it's going to be a nightmare. So we just threw that fence down while she was singing and playing. So I, I'm happy. Like, I really feel like people enjoyed it, and that made it all worth it, so.
Yeah, and I mean that just again, I wish I would have been there for that because that just seems like one of those memories that you'll have for a really, really long time, of
Mhm.
just that many people, that type of performance in Indianapolis, right? And I think we still have this like weird, at least I do, this weird Hoosier mentality of like, I can't believe we had that here,
Right.
in Indianapolis.
Nothing cool ever happens here.
Uh,
Uh,
get over that.
yeah, and we had some fun surprises for the community this year, um, and it's this obviously isn't what we want to do. Like, we want to be, this time normally I am stressed out. I can't breathe. I'm constantly responding to messages, and now I miss it. Like, I wish that I was having those adrenaline filled days of exhaustion, getting ready to pull off something great. So the virtual festival, I think, is going to be really, really fun for folks, and it's going to be really, really safe. And that's what's important right now, is to really support each other, and to be in solidarity, and to know that with any luck, we'll be back next year, um, stronger than ever. So.
Yeah, and that's really what has me excited for a lot of this stuff is I think that
Mhm.
there's so much like pent up waiting and like
Right.
anticipation for stuff that when things, if and when things get back to normal, it's going to come back in full force, like tenfold, right? And
Yeah.
you see a lot of memes about just people coming back way too hard from being in quarantine, and that's exactly what I imagine it's going to be like.
I hope so. Yeah. Like I said, so our quarantine experience is something I never would have imagined. So back years ago, when my husband and I have been together for 7 years, we've been married for 5. But, before we got married, we had the conversation of we wanted to have children someday. So we got married and started going through the foster classes. And we like just slowly did it because there's a situation where we both liked the idea of having kids,
Mhm.
but we didn't like the idea of giving up all of the fun things we're doing, especially when I got the job at Pride and we were going out all the time and people like knew us, and we actually had like new friends, and really enjoyed that part. So on our anniversary, which is July 11th, last year, we
Yeah,
went out to
I remember, right?
right. We went out to dinner delivery, and we totally got like tipsy. And I'm like, look, let's be honest. Like, neither one of us really want kids right now, because we're having fun. Like, we're doing all these things. Like, yeah, I just don't know how to say that. And I'm like, you just say it. Like, we're gonna hold off for a couple of years. So we were totally on the we're gonna hold off train, but we were finishing our license so that we could just get it done and get them off our back. The woman comes over to finish our foster license and then just says, so I've got 3 kids and I think they'd be perfect for you. And they were 3 months old, almost 2, and almost 4, which is kind of what we were looking for. And we were like, yeah, I guess we can meet them. And then we met them, and within, 2 minutes we were in love, and 3 minutes we were on the floor playing with them, and
Wow.
20 minutes later we were like, okay, like, let's sign up. A week later we went to IKEA and spent $3,000 on furniture and everything else, and had all of our like friends over to um, do the house. And I remember one time I said, like, we're just not ready for this. And my husband said, well, we're never going to be ready. And I'm like, oh no, you're saying that as if I lack confidence. I'm saying this house is not ready for children. We have glass shelves. Like, and so since last August, we've been fostering, and hoping to adopt these kids, which is why I can't tell any like specifics, because we're still in this very strange DCS situation.
Yeah.
Um, so we hope to adopt them, if the opportunity allows itself. And quarantining for, I think, 9 weeks or however long it's been, has been awesome, and we've bonded so much. But also, like, it is constant chaos and constant noise of my nerves are just shot sometimes. So.
But think
But
about how prepared you're going to be for when you get back into an office setting and you have to
oh
put
my
out a fire and you're just like, oh, this is a piece of cake compared to that summer.
Oh my God. Like, I remember we went to Palm Springs just before the COVID hit because we needed to get away. We needed a break. We were working so much, and the kids, we hadn't had a break from them. And so we went there without the kids. And I'm thinking, God, I was exhausted then. That's nothing. I'll take that back any day. So anyway, but they're amazing. So that's been my quarantine experience, and also planning Pride stuff with, you know, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old screaming in your ear for attention. So I always put them on the Zoom calls with me and say, look, aren't they cute? Okay, back to business. So,
do you think that because it is going to be online, that this is an opportunity for people who otherwise wouldn't have gone to Pride for one reason or another might attend?
absolutely. I think this is like the revenge of the introverts, like this whole time. And I'm naturally introverted. One of my very close friends is naturally introverted. And so we've had like so many funny conversations about, on Facebook, you see extroverts just freaking out for attention or connection or something because they just don't know how to function. When as an introvert, like that's my whole life, is adjusting to the extroverted world that we live in.
Right.
And so I think the introverts are definitely going to appreciate and experience Pride in a way that they never really have, excuse me, because it's all virtual. And I think that people are able to dip in and dip out as they want to.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like committing to going to a park for the day, you can put it on, have some fun, go do whatever you want to do, have it on in the background while you're cooking dinner, have it on when you're having a couple of close friends over if you're choosing to do that, and just experience Pride that way. I think there's going to be a lot of funny moments, probably a lot of things that are going to give me a heart attack because they're happening live. But it's going to be memorable. It's definitely going to be memorable. So
I love it. Yeah. So I want to give you a quick opportunity. If there's something that we haven't hit on, I know we're getting close to the hour.
sure.
If there's anything that I didn't specifically ask you about that you want to make sure that people hear, or even if it's just a reminder, hey, this is where you can go to participate. This is where you can get the, the lawn banner, to kind of support in that way. Here's your opportunity.
Well, thank you. I'd say there's lots of opportunities for people to engage. So normally we have pet pride where people dress up their pets in pride gear, and then we have a big like family fun day at the park. We're doing that virtually now. So you can dress up your pet in this pride gear, submit your picture, and then we're having a contest that your pet will be judged, and then you could win some sort of prize. I don't know the specifics of the prize yet, but it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
And then, so you can submit your photo there. We're doing graduation photos for people so we're sharing on social media LGBTQ folks that have graduated since they can't have their normal celebrations. You can submit that. We do People of Pride. So you just tell what Pride means to you and submit your picture, and we promote it on social media. And then I just say tune in. The next event we have is our Pride launch party, which is Sunday, June 7th. And we're going to have some great entertainment. We're going to have some cocktails, talk about a little bit of the history of Pride and what to expect on the virtual Pride celebration, which is June 20th.
June 20th. Okay. So 2 important dates, June 7th and June 20th, for people to kind of look out for. And then again, Indy Pride.
Yeah.
They can find
has a complete list of events. And a couple of other is we're having some history of drag. We're doing a 2-part series on that where we have local queens talk about their experiences. And then we're very fortunate in our community to have someone that did a lot of research in the history of drag from the 1930s to the present.
Awesome.
So stuff like that. Yeah. So look it up, indypride.org. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Chris, it's been amazing. And I'm sure we could have talked for a full other hour.
Right.
But I think that we've, been able to hit on some good stuff that people can, dive into a little bit deeper if they want to do a little bit more research and at least get a little bit more familiar on where they can go to support and find out about some of these upcoming events. So thank you so much for being a part of the show. committing to this time, even though things have gotten weird. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
I appreciate you.